In this lesson, we'll use shaft and holder clearance. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to use shaft and holder clearance to avoid collisions. In Fusion 360, we're going to carry on with our multi-axis contour. We're going to first edit the multi-axis contour and change the geometry back to this upper chain that we first started with. I then want to move back to my passes, and I'm going to change the sideways tilt to 25 degrees. Now that we have a holder on, in this case, our tool, we want to take a look at what the simulation does for the holder as it moves around the part. We want to see if we have any collisions and what happens when we do have those collisions. I'm going to slow this down and play through. And as we move around, you can see that the holder itself is cutting through many different areas on the part. So while the original simulation didn't show this because we didn't have a holder, now that we do have that holder geometry on there, it's very clear to see that this would absolutely destroy the part. So what we want to do now is we want to explore an option that's called shaft and holder that's located on the tool tab. If we turn on shaft and holder, I'm going to leave the type set to trimmed, but on my passes section, I want to make sure that I'm turn when impossible. We're going to allow it to calculate, and because it's now taking a look at the shaft and holder geometry and how it collides with our part, we want to make sure that we understand that this is going to take quite a bit longer to calculate. And this is also one of those reasons why I always say when you're creating a new operation, especially one you're not comfortable with, go with the default settings at first, generate an operation, and once you can see what's being created, you'll have a better understanding of which of the settings you should modify in order to get it to perform how you would expect. Now that the operation is calculated, let's go ahead and simulate it one more time and see what happened to those collisions with the holder and the part. If we look at the bottom, you can see we no longer see any collisions. I'm going to slow this down and play through just to see what happens. In the areas where it would have collided, it raises the tool up. And if we take a look at, in this case, the tool path, you can see that it is still going entirely around the part, but in those specific instances, it was able to pull the tool away. So what this means is that allowing us to use that shaft and holder clearance is a good way for us to ensure that we don't damage the part or the machine by having contact between the holder and the part. Keep in mind that this is not a perfect option when we're working in these multi-axis contours. It's not going to be looking at the holder and shaft clearance with the fixture. It's really just looking at the actual part. This also means it's not looking at avoiding the stock. So if there's extra stock like we have left behind on our part down here in these areas, it's not going to be looking at that as a valid option for keeping the tool or the holder away. So it's a good idea to always remember that we need to clear those areas out and we need to understand exactly what these options are doing. Once we're done adjusting these operations, let's go ahead and make sure that we save this before we move on to the next step.